Hello there. Another foot update, footnote number 2. It's Saturday, and I was talking to a dear friend of mine on the phone yesterday, and I had like an awareness of something. It's very easy to track for pain because it hurts. It's not that easy to track for the absence of pain, because you're kind of looking for a thing that isn't, you know. But I started to notice that there was a thing that isn't. And there were kind of three pains at work, I guess. Around the outside of my foot, there's an arthritis. And I've had that arthritic problem for a decade or more. And the weak ligaments of my ankles means that I kind of crash and fall over occasionally. I think I'm banned from every glassware shop in Wiltshire. I'm not kidding. Yes, and there's also been this, like, the pain from the injury when I push the nerve down onto the bone. And of course, there's the pain of a surgeon putting his knife into the middle of my foot and fiddling around and sawing off a bit of bone. So, attempting to detect where the pains are, which pain is what is which, is an interesting thing. One of the things I did prior to the foot op was after, I think it was the March consultation, I was driving home and I noticed that the pain in my foot was kind of coming back round beneath one of my big toe on my right hand foot. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I haven't really noticed the way the pain moves around, and I hadn't noticed before the direction that it moves in. So when I got home, I took photographs of my feet with a camera and loaded them into a drawer package. And every time I kind of noticed a different sensation, I opened up a Word document and imported the picture of my foot into the drawer package, one of these paint shop things, and put kind of red marks where the pain was with arrows. And over a period of a couple of weeks, I kind of built up this document of a kind of foot diary with text describing the sensations and pictures showing exactly where the pain was and how it moves around. And the consultant's face when I took this in next time, a month later, I said, oh, by the way, and I've done this, and I gave him this like 4-page document with these photographs, text, arrows, everything. And he said, this is fantastic. He said, looking at me like, yes, you are Asperger's syndrome. And he said, now, what you show is this. And he got a pen, and he started drawing markings on top. And he showed that the directions where I'm saying the pain was, even at one point, it was moving from beneath the big toe across the foot. They're all part of the same nerve pattern, which helped him to form the conclusion that it was the deeper perennial nerve, not the surface one, that had been affected. So, what I'm noticing is that travelling, moving pain is absent. And there's been, for about 5 years, there's been this stinging sensation right in the core of my foot that I can only describe as something like a cross between a fire, like burning yourself in a fire, and an electric shock, but as a constant duck, 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 and 24/7. In the bath, waking up in the morning, cooking food, eating dinner, driving, shopping out the car, every possible situation, standing up and playing an open mic, singing songs, trying to remember words, trying to remember the chords, to actually play in time because you've got a dyspraxic brain, and have this yeah coming from the foot upwards all the time. So it's made life slightly challenging. I wrote about that earlier, I'm not going to go into that. But yesterday I started to notice the absence of it, and I feel happy. I mean, really, like, yeah. I mean, I've been kind of, since my marriage, I've been free, but I haven't felt free. I felt encumbered. I felt kind of closed in, like there's a cloud. Astrologically, I've had a series of Saturn transits that have been almost permanent for 4 years, and they're coming to a bit of a close towards the end of this year. So there's a kind of an astrological correlation with this idea of sort of a sense of emerging from something. But I can feel this sense of freedom. And I said on the phone, I want to jump up and down. Actually, just want, like a child, I want to find a puddle and go jumpy, jumpy, jump. Because I can. And I just got to wait for this operation pain to go. And I said to someone else on the phone today, you've only known me about 2 or 3 years, so all you've known is a wounded Dave. You know, Stonehenge tours, astrology readings, teaching things, open mic videos, all of that. Everything you've experienced the last 2 or 3 years has been what I'm like when I'm in constant daily pain and in agony. So that's wounded Dave. What will start beginning to happen, of course, is you'll have an emergent, exuberant, kind of Tigger-like Dave who's actually finding life to be fun. Fun! Oh, that'd be cool. So I'm really, 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 really looking forward to this. And as a part of kind of getting things together a bit, and I've been collating a few books, all of which are now far past the deadline that I promised people they'd be done by, and I do apologise for that. One of the reasons I haven't collated the poetry book is because I keep writing stuff I think, this is good, this should go in. At some point I have to stop it and then filter the new things into, you know, volume 6 or whatever. Anyway, another thing I've been doing is, for 4 years, is procrastinating completely with recording music properly. In 2013, the hard drive in my music computer crashed, and my dear friend Howard helped me, you know, put a new hard drive in, or rather, I watched him do it. That, you know, and it was all ready for reloading the software, but for some reason I just didn't really feel like doing it, and I felt not like doing it for ages. Doing the open mics, I mean, this is 2 years before I sang. So when I used to do multi-track recording before, I was doing multi-track recording with a voice that wasn't used to singing, and I was terrified and kind of wanted to hide behind the music all the time, so you couldn't hear me at all. And now, of course, it's the other way around. Now, you know, the last time I did an open mic in Avebury, I opened up the evening, and I began with a song where I just strummed the chord once, and I sang the first verse a cappella, you know, without any music behind me. The Dave who was doing multi-track recording before in 2013 would not have done that. And of course I was doing that while I was in pain as well, but you know. Yes, so I began a couple of weeks ago to reload this software in. So I was talking to someone who plays in an orchestra, and one of my favourite woodwind instrument is an oboe. We were talking about woodwind instruments, and I've kind of used that sound on a couple of things. And so I thought, oh, I'll get that going again. You know, now's the time perhaps. And I've started to rebuild these things. And I had my music studio speakers underneath the desk, because someone said, you know, they look unsightly, put it under the desk. So I thought, no, I'm not going to have the speakers under the desk. So I brought them out and I plonked them on top of the desk. And the sound is like, yo, wow, brilliant. So there's a couple of technical blips that still need to be ironed out, but I'm on the way to being able to kind of record again. Now, a little story behind one of these things, because there's something I'd like you to do, if you wouldn't mind, right? And that is, in 1981, I joined a band in 1980. I auditioned for a band in West London in 1980 and got in. I taught myself to play. I couldn't read note music, and I was astonished they let me in, but they did. And we just had really good fun playing in this band. And then they decided that the keyboard player wasn't as didn't have as much of a dexterity as they wished. So I felt really funny about that, because the keyboard player was the first member of the band I spoke to on the phone, and so I had a kind of like a good friendship with him. And he used to drive me about, so I didn't drive then. So he used to drive from Uxbridge all the way out to Slough, collect me, then take me to rehearsals, and then drive me back home again, and then he'd go home. He was doing a lot of running around, and we got kind of close, and we used to come in, and we used to sit and talk to my mum when she was in her chair and things. So I kind of drifted away from this band, and I started doing jamming things on Saturdays with the keyboard player, Dave. And we used to have a really good laugh. The only thing is, it was just the two of us. So then I said, well, one of my old schoolmates, who I was in a punk band with, plays bass, and I did a jam with them when my mum died. His name was Andy, and he came round. He said, "Come on, get your guitar." And it was about the day after my mum had died, and both of his parents died by the time he was 16. So we went to this house in Bray, I think it was, and there's a guy who had a drum kit set up in his living room, and he used to tap along when his mum and dad were watching films on telly. So they're watching, Columbo or something, and he's in the corner of the room going and things like that along with the thing. And I thought, I know I kind of jam along at the top of the pops, but a drum kit? Anyway, very liberal parents. We had this jam, and it was really good fun. His name was Greg, I think. Greg or Craig. And anyway, so I said, I know a bass player. So they kind of come along. And we had this kind of little band beginning to form, and it was really good fun. We'd lock ourselves in a soundproof room on a Saturday near Heathrow Airport and spend the whole day just, bashing out music and jamming little things, finding little riffs. But it was all very incoherent and, patchy. And we couldn't write. None of us could write words. I couldn't write a word. Essays, poems, nothing. And so I saw an advert in, I think it was Melody Maker or something. This person was advertising song lyrics. So I went all the way to Islington, which was an adventure in itself, had a chat with this lyricist, and paid to have permission to use 10 of their songs. And so then we had these words, but we didn't have any sense of melody. There wasn't any sense of prosody even. We didn't know what the timing of the melody was or the rhythm of these things. Nothing really happened with it. And then I had a little romance. I was 19. My first little taste of romance for about 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, she decided that, weren't suitable. So I felt, I was quite, affected by that. And then 10 days later, my mum died after 9 years of illness. And it was like everything feminine just went from my world completely. And I went into a bit of a kind of a state about it. I had a funny relationship with the fact that she'd gone. One of my friends said I was heartless, but I wasn't in deep bereavement. And that's because I had this sense that she was around. See, I'm a twin survivor, and I spent all my childhood sort of aware that my twin brother's kind of bopping around. And I had a lot of astral projection experiences when I was young, and I remember them vividly. And the night my mum died, I went into the room where she was, and I got this sense that she was in the ceiling. And I don't mean on the ceiling, floating like that. I mean inside it. I couldn't see her, but I knew she was there, and I was having a chat with her. And, in a very synchronous way, at a funeral, just as her ashes were lowered into the ground and it began to be covered, that was the moment the cloud came over the sun, and it was almost as if the sun went out of my world completely. And I felt cold and alone, and I got flu, which is obviously the emotions coming out. And there's a point to this story, by the way. These emotions were coming out, and I was curled up on a Sunday morning, kind of having one of those half sleeps like you might do when you're feverish and fluey. This is in September, or just at the end of September, and I had this really, really vivid astral experience, and I was flying. I don't know if you've had a conscious astral experience, but it's just amazing when you're lucid, when you're out of your body, and the exuberance of flying at the speed of light is just brilliant. And I was whizzing along, and there's this kind of rolling green landscape sort of unfolding beneath me, as it were. And I saw this house, and it was like a bit like a weather house. You used to get the man and the woman coming out if it's raining or sunshine. And outside, or like on this porch, were my mum and dad. And they were youthful, and they were both standing up, and they were holding hands, and they were waving at me as I flew over. And I felt a sort of reconnection, a kind of sort of a real deep inside me sort of see you later kind of feeling. And I began becoming consciously interested in spiritual things after listening to an album by David Bowie when I was about 10, 11 years old called Hunky Dory. And there's a song on the album called Quicksand. And I used to ask my dad, what's this? But my dad was busy looking after my mum because she was ill. So I had to kind of figure things out. So I used to go to the library a lot and look things up. And he mentions Alistair Crowley and the Golden Dawn and bardo. What is a bardo in this song? And so I used to look these things up, and I ended up reading up a lot of kind of Western mysticism, really. And so I already had a bit of a sense of different notions that people have when we leave life. And this kind of notion that when you leave life, the kind of this sort of human veil that we have, our soul is far more majestic than that which comes through us when we're in incarnated form. And so when the lenses of the human psyche are kind of gradually melt away, then you see everything for what it is. And you see yourself for what you are too, and the ripples of the pond of all the things you've done and said, and the consequences of all the things you've done and said as well. And so there's this sort of notion that it's in death's release, as it were, when we return home, that we then see everything clearly and we feel everything clearly as well. But while we're here sheathed in human experience, we are but a small brain in a very big universe. So this I found after 2 weeks, not long after that astral thing, that I started to write, and I wrote my first proper song, what I would think of as a proper song. I'd done kind of thrash things, kind of shouting rants when I was in a punk band. I was 17 and they were 16, and we kind of go la, 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 for 3 minutes. Next song, blah, 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 like that. But I mean, as in a sophisticated song, I was listening to Japan and early Ultravox. Ultravox were the first band I ever saw. So I had this kind of other stuff in my brain from kind of Bowie's Heroes and watching, listening to Ultravox and seeing them for the first time, watching them like the first live experience. And then when I heard Japan and the sophistication, the rhythms in that band were astonishing. And a lot of people remember Japan for the imagery or David Sylvian's voice. But Mick Kahn and the drummer David Jansen, wow, what a rhythm unit. They were just superb. We had a drummer in a band who was mad on Steely Dan because of the drumming. And but he was also mad on Japan as well. And, we used to say that people don't know what they missed. They really don't know what they missed. And I was lucky enough to see them at Hammersmith in the springtime of 81. So that kind of texture started to come out, and I borrowed this little Casio keyboard thing from a girl at work, and I had a cassette tape recorder where you could do mic mixing. So I found I could record a guitar, then swap the cassette with another blank one, and then record myself playing along with it, and then swap them over and record myself playing with that. And you build up layers and layers of tape hiss. But I made a kind of a demo of how I wanted the song to be. And I had a notion of the guitar, and I had a notion of a keyboard line, which is very oboe-like, and I had a notion of a bass line as well. So I played it to the band and said, could we do this? What do you think? We didn't have a singer, but we constructed this song. And the next Monday, Dave, the keyboard player, rang me up at work. He said, that was good. He said, 10 out of 10 for that. That is good. And his thing was Roxy Music. So I thought, wow, if I've impressed you, we're off, So then we started looking for a singer. And so this flourish of writing began to happen. And within a little while, I was writing 3 things a day. Literally just this A4 folder of poems and notions just went like that. And that carried on all the way through my 20s. It kind of slowed down in my 30s. It started to become hypnotherapy scripts and kind of working with other people's unconscious. And it's only really been in the last... I kind of still wrote the occasional poem. There was a flourish of songwriting at the end of the 90s, and it went very slow during my period of being married. But since I've been on my own again, this outpouring is happening, and I'm very happy for that. People say, why do you write so much? How is it prolific? And it's just kind of flows out. So catch it while you can. if you've ever been a writer and looked at a blank page, you'll know the joy of actually finding that there's something coming out of you rather than nothing. So anyway, the point is that I began to rebuild this song just before the hard drive crashed in 2013. So I've opened up the music file and it's still functioning. Hooray! So I've got this idea of recording all the songs that I've been writing since I've been singing on open mics, because my songwriting's matured, my voice has changed as well. I've actually got a voice now, whereas I didn't have a voice before, with the idea of finding out how to kind of self-publish CDs, upload things. You know, other bands do it and things. There must be a way of being able to get a CD on iTunes or get a CD on Amazon or both. So that's the plan. And it takes me a long time to program drums because I don't like a click track as such. You know, something just going. I used to love being in a soundproof room on a Saturday, standing next to a drum kit and just going with it. You know, I think the music ripples through you when you're next to a drum kit. So just a monotonous, basic metronome that drive me crazy. It's like, elevator music, lift music, terrible. So I like to kind of program a drum track so it moves like a drummer, which means putting different fills at the end of bars, so at least it sounds sort of human, even though it actually isn't. And that takes me, or it used to take me, a long time. I don't know how quickly I can do it now, but once I've done that, building the track, the rest of the instruments is fairly quick. I can't play piano, which is a downfall, a slight challenge. So I don't know if you've heard, whenever it's your birthday, I put a little birthday message, and there's a track, it's all me. And there's some, I wanted to do some jazz piano, and I spent hours and hours and hours and hours figuring that out. And I don't know what notes I'm playing, I just go by the sound, and then repeat it and repeat it and repeat it and repeat it until I can do it without error. Yeah, I was so pleased when I heard that, because it sounds like an authentic jazz piano, and it's not. It's someone who can't play having a go. And so, anyway, the point is, the introduction music of this song called Strangeways is almost exactly a replica of how it sounded in the band when we did it. So, like a tipping the hat to the band, Andy, the bass player, I found out he died. Must be about 15 odd years ago. Someone on Friends Reunited said that he'd sadly died 2 weeks after getting married. So, in honour to him doing that bass, and to Dave as well, and of course the song itself, I'd like to kind of recreate this first song. So I actually want your opinion. So once I've finished yagging, I'm going to put the song here with some photographs of those days, and it's only, the introduction's only about 37 seconds or something like that. So you just hear it build up, and then it suddenly just stops, and then there's a drum track running on, because that's waiting for the rest of the song to be kind of laid on top of it. But I just want to, do you like this? What do you think? Is it worth it? That kind of thing. But the words, the first verse in this song is called Strangeways. The idea is love moves in strange ways. The first verse was about the girl that I knew for 2 weeks and then said goodbye. The second verse is about my mum. And there's a line in it, this notion that the soul sees everything when you leave life. There's a line that says, "The mind's eye clambers over stile, the soul sees the endless mile." I like that line. I was only 19, and it was the first lyric I'd ever written. And there's another part of it where it says, "The future brings a memory that is not me." And isn't that an interesting line? The future brings a memory that is not me. And I had this kind of notion that there was like a trajectory of my life. And then somehow the script writers dropped a page and my life's gone on this other road. And I'm like, excuse me, I was going down this road and my mum was going to kind of meet my future wife and normal life thing. And something seems to have gone awry and we've gone this way instead, but I was supposed to be over there. And that's how it kind of feels. That's how my life felt at the time that there was these kind of different pathways, and I'd kind of turned left by mistake. I should have carried on going the other way. So, but the idea that the future brings a memory that is not yourself, yes, you can have a philosophical discussion about that for a long time. And I used to find that one of the girls in the office I worked with was gay, and she used to keep it very quiet. We used to talk about this a lot, and I was really struck by, you know, in those days, because it's the anniversary of the legalization, but still in 1981 she had to keep things quiet. I was appalled when she said if she said goodbye to the person she loves on a railway station, that she wouldn't be allowed to kiss goodbye. How could you not kiss goodbye to your loved one on a railway station? And it's because society wouldn't approve of love. Isn't that awful? I thought it was terrible. So I used to write a lot of songs about this sense of being marginalised, different, out on the outside of society, not knowing that I'm Asperger's or autistic at the time as well. And so I'd use a lot of metaphors about light and things. And I remember we got this new keyboard player at some point, and he had a girlfriend who kind of read through my lyrics, and she said to me then, are you interested in the occult? And I was, but I didn't say so. And she said, you have a profound understanding of life. I said, do I? Kind of twinkly-eyed. And she said, yeah, this song is about that, isn't it? I said, no, it's not. It's actually about something else. She said, well, I read that into it. And I thought, well, that's just the way you're reading it. And she said, you know, this is going to emerge in you later. And whether that was a hypnotic suggestion, and here we are, or whether or not that was a prophecy, we're still here anyway. But anyway, it all began, this songwriting malarkey, with this song Strangeways. So I'll put the lyric of it into the caption of the video, and see what you think of the introduction. And I do apologise for my slightly hesitant talking, but yes, I'm a bit post-op and tired and things. It's strange. I have this lucidity of wanting to talk all the time, while at the same time a kind of a drowsy, woozy sensation as well. But I do feel much better. My foot's resting on a stool while I'm talking at the moment, and it feels fine. And apart from when I flick my toes up, which I did just then, and like a bolt of pain just shot across my foot because I pulled the stitches. Good idea to not do that. Got to remember to not wiggle my toes too much. But the sensation that would normally be there inside my foot, it isn't there. And I'm actually at rest. Before I've been resting. Now I'm at rest. I love this sensation. You know, there's like a sense of being free from pain. It's amazing. I know it's ordinary, it's normal, and all of that. But for to have something nagging at you for 5 years and for it then to go silent, yeah, I like this a lot. Anyway, see what you think of this piece of music. It's called Strangeways, and it's just the intro part. Thank you for listening to this ramble and waffle, and let us know what you think of the idea of this song. See you later. Thank you. Bye.